Well, joining me now to discuss the hostage crisis in Algeria is Dr. Christina Hellmich. She is an expert in international relations at Reading University. Christina, thanks very much for being with us this evening. What's been happening today seems to have painted a rather chaotic picture of the Algerian government's handling of the situation. Why have they handled it in this way, do you think?
Good question. I think the picture we're getting is extremely fragmented, lots of contradictory news, in fact. The Algerians have obviously handled hostage-taking crisis in the past in relation to fighting al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb. And I think they are, they're acting as they have acted in the past, sometimes with more, sometimes with less success.
Now, we saw a list there, we heard a list rather from Reuters about some of the nationalities of the hostage takers. The government also said that some of them came from Libya. How does this fit the picture, given that we know that the Algerian kidnapper Bel Mokhtar is at the head of this attack?
Well, I think it overall confirms some fears that we have, that there's more fighters coming back from Libya, they're heavily armed. I think that has been around. I think the bigger picture points to the idea that al-Qaeda is somehow involved. I know earlier this day we've heard about al-Mokhtar being described as a senior al-Qaeda leader. That's obviously misleading because he's not that. That's better seen as rhetoric and propaganda rather than fact.
And is that because he was at some point connected to al-Qaeda's rhetoric, but since then they have parted ways? Why is that?
Well, there has been a lot of internal fragmentation, both over the ideology of al-Qaeda in the Maghreb and also over tactics, what to do when. That is very much a sign of al-Qaeda right now, but it's particularly pronounced also in the franchises. So what is the agenda? I think what is interesting about al-Qaeda in the Maghreb is that it has always been focused on the local agenda, namely fighting to overthrow the Algerian government, has never focused on the broader international agenda, i.e. fighting the West. The global jihad has not been an issue, and I think that is something we need to look into very closely.
So how big a problem is this going to be for the Algerian government? It's a bit like putting an octopus in a bag, isn't it? If it's got that many tentacles, there's so many armed groups. Sure. How do they start with dealing with the problem?
I think it is a problem, but it's neither a new problem nor is it a particularly challenging problem. It's something that has caught our attention because the timing has been, in a sense, great for both the perpetrators and the West, because we have in the backdrop the French going into Mali. So I think that link has brought the focus onto it. But really, it's an old problem. There has been a lot of hostage taking in the past, in 2002, 2003 until now. The Algerians have a lot of experience dealing with al-Qaeda in the Maghreb, and this is not anything new or particularly challenging.
Do you think that they might be forced, maybe through international pressure, because of the international nature of this incident, to deal with it differently at least?
I think the problem here is that it has been exploited, certainly by the French media and by French commentators, that this is a real threat, also a threat to the West, that we have to be very concerned about. I don't think that's the issue here at all. I think that's an excuse. I think the bigger picture at stake here is that the French have other interests in Mali, and that the link is very conducive to making the argument of going into Mali. But to my mind, there really is not a threat to the West, but we need to look closer into what are the real incentives for being in Mali, and why, for example, are they sending warplanes and not humanitarian aid.
Christina, thanks very much for joining us with your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.